Expo West, how are we today? My name is Ryan DeBona, Group Sales Director at Inmar Intelligence, and I'm excited to welcome you to today's session, Building Brands that Shoppers Can Come Back to. If you're here, your chances are you're navigating some version of the same reality. Discovery takes work, distribution takes work, and repeat purchase determines whether that growth sticks. Now, walking the halls of Expo West, we're surrounded by new innovation, new products, new claims, new packaging. Quick show of hands out there, who's tried something today that made him step back and say, wow? Couple people? Okay, I know I have. I'm already full and it's not even 1 o'clock. So in that moment, the real question is, are you going to leave this conference, walk into your local grocery store, walk into your convenience store, and buy it again? Earning that repeat customer is what moves a brand from emerging to established and ultimately strengthens retailer conversations. That's what we're here to talk about today. At Inmar, we work at the intersection of retailers and brands, connecting media, incentives, loyalty, and measurement to help brands grow with clarity and confidence. With a connected retail network reaching over more than 200 million shoppers, we've seen how complex and ultimately how powerful the path to repeat purchase can be. But today isn't about us. It's about lived experience. So the leaders on the stage, they all operate in different categories and different growth stages, but they're all working towards that same goal, earning repeat purchase. Now, I'm excited to be joined on stage by these three fantastic individuals. First off, Enrick Garcia, Senior Director of Shopper Marketing at Bloom, a brand operating in one of the most competitive and fast-moving beverage categories in retailer today. Second is DeeDee McCoy, Director of Omnichannel Marketing at Chomps, a brand that has built strong velocity and presence in a crowded snacking category by aligning brand story with execution. Last but not least, to my right, Jeremy Myers, a Senior Manager of Shopper Marketing at Frontier Co-op, a purpose-driven brand with deep heritage and broad portfolio navigating frequency, occasion, and shelf complexity. Thank you all for being here. All right, before we break the ice here, I'd love to start with a quick roundtable so we can ground our conversations in your day-to-day. I'd love to ask each of you what emerging means for your brand and how does that shape your growth plans? Enrick, I'll start with you and then go to DeeDee.
Yeah, when I think emerging, I think having that challenger brand mindset, really going against those category legacy norms, whether that's leaning into better for you formulations, ingredient transparency, leaning into better for you alternatives. For us, it's all about, leaning in and driving repeat and loyalty.
Awesome. DeeDee.
For us, we are a fast-growing emerging brand, and we operate like one, so we're very quick and nimble and have a lot of cross-functional collaboration, which has proven to be successful for us. We currently have a 44% repeat rate, which is the #1 repeat in the better-for-you meat snacks category, so we're really learning and testing, lots of testing and learning, based on what's working within different retailers.
Well, I can tell you have a strong repeat in the DeBona household, for sure. And Jeremy?
Yeah, for sure. So for us emerging, we've been around for quite a while, so it's not as much for us of being like a new brand, although at the channel level, more conventional retailers have definitely been new to us. So definitely like growing in that space as opposed to historically being in more like the natural retailers. And we do lead in organic spices, but I would say we are definitely more of a challenger brand within like the overall spice category.
I love that term, challenger brand, emerging challenger brand. Now, what's become the most challenging for emerging brands in the last 12 to 18 months, even when demand in your category has been strong? I'll start with you, Jeremy, and go across the board.
Yeah, so a lot of it's definitely the consumer price sensitivity. Things have been getting a lot more expensive, as everybody's seeing. And with us being a premium brand, there's definitely some challenges that come along with that. We've seen it be a little bit harder to capture the attention of shoppers as well, and then justifying our price points and maintaining that loyalty.
DeeDee?
Yeah, and for us, my mic is on. Is my mic on?
Yeah, I hear it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, for us, a challenge is that you can't be slow on the shelf anymore. There's no slow ramp. You have to prove yourself and that you belong there on the shelf. And then shoppers are are more intentional now. So they're looking for, clear messaging across all channels, and they're also making decisions very quickly. So we have to be able to move quickly with changing shopper behavior.
Interesting. Enrick.
Yeah, to me, it's a couple of things. Listen, I think inflation continues to be, affecting the consumer in a major way. The second for me is just the competitive pressure from, I call it the category leaders investing heavily into price and promotion, whether that's to protect their market share or drive volume. And then I think the last thing for me is just the small window in order you have to prove success, when you get into a retailer. I think it's awesome landing those points of distribution, but the clock really starts on day one in order to prove yourself and drive velocity.
Hit the ground running. That's what I'm hearing at that retailer. Well, it's interesting to hear that your categories are all different. The business models are different, but all of this pressure seems and sounds very familiar. You're all working to earn interest and turn that into something sustainable, move from trial to repeat, and ultimately build brands that shoppers come back to. Really what this session is about here today. Now, to make this easy to follow, we've organized this conversation into 5 steps to drive repeat purchase, which is what we're calling the repeat recipe. It's appropriate because there's a lot of great food brands, so why not have a recipe focus? The first is position with purpose. Second, invest in the right moments, show up consistently, measure real behavior, and build habit. Now, as we move through each one, you'll hear how it plays out around different categories and where those common patterns show up. So let's start with the foundation, position with purpose. Accenture reports that 77% of consumers say they are more loyal to brands that share their values. And our own proprietary research on consumer behavior also confirms that 43% of shoppers say they're much more intentional with what they buy. Now, they're editing their carts with purpose, and that tells us something important. When a brand is aligned to someone's priorities, whether it's health, sustainability, transparency, it feels natural to choose them again. So I'd like to focus the next question on position. Jeremy, how do you clearly define what your brand stands for in a way that's relevant to your consumer at Frontier?
Yeah, of course. So definitely 2 parts that I'd like to answer for this one. So Simply Organic is part of the Frontier Co-op family of brands, and that's what I'll be focusing on today. But as a co-op, we're driven by a simple purpose, which is doing good works. And with that, we're trying to have a positive impact on every aspect that we touch. So like employees, the supply chain, the communities that we're in. And outside of that side of the purpose, with the branding for Simply Organic, we're always organic. All of the products under that brand are organic. So I think that helps us, clearly define what we stand for.
DeeDee, same question.
So we try to keep it simple. So you may have seen our packaging. We have high quality proteins. We've really aligned on which attributes we focus on. So high quality protein, 0 sugar, made with real ingredients, and then just very clean, clear packaging with the certification logos. So then when we think about the digital shelf, making sure everything is consistent across all channels. So what you're seeing on shelf, you're also seeing on the digital shelf.
Yes, and then Enrick, I'd like to finish off with you.
Yeah, I think we're very fortunate at Bloom to have 2 amazing co-founders, Greg and Mari. Bloom's story, Mari hit rock bottom physically and mentally, and went under this amazing health and wellness transformation, and really led, creating Bloom, able to create products that were accessible to the everyday consumer, giving products to give everyone to turn and bloom into their the best version of themselves.
Bloom into the best version of themselves. I love that. I'm taking that with me. I'm going to steal that one. Now, what did you learn about the consumer after launching that either validated or challenged your positioning at Bloom?
Yeah, great question. I think one for us, as we launched one of our beverage lines, this was expanding in a new channel for us, which was outside of what we traditionally have done, and we had an opportunity to partner with the team at Inmar and specifically put a campaign together to go after specific channel, specific retail in a certain geographic area, and through that campaign we were able to go focus on traditional moments from a media perspective. So think of beverage, some of the traditional ones, morning occasion, health and wellness, fitness. But as we were working on the campaign wrap up, one of the things that jumped out to us, which we overthought, was just the pairing of food, and something that we underestimated, and caused us to rethink on how we look from a visual identity positioning with the consumer from an activation standpoint. And fast forward a few months later, actually when we started to have a lot of data on this initial launch, it validated what we saw from the initial campaign that we did with Inmar, and improving some of the affinities that we saw early on from our campaign with Inmar.
That's great. And so targeting the right person in the right mindset to drive that conversion, that's important. Now, if positioning defines who you are, the next question is when you show up. Purchase decisions happen in moments. We know this. We have a split second at shelf, online, during a promotion or a seasonal shift. It's the context that shapes the behavior. Our data shows that 44% of shoppers look for deals first and then plan meals around what's on sale. Planning often starts before that initial store visit. Now, timing is very important now. It influences whether a shopper tries you and whether they try you again ultimately. So let's talk about showing up at the right time. How do you decide what moments are worth investing in, especially when the budget is limited and everything feels important all at once? DeeDee, I'd love to start with you.
Yeah, so definitely we're focused on big launches and then seasonal time periods where we're seeing some spikes in sales. And I know that depends on what category you're currently in, and it could be specific by retailer if they have key moments by channel or by retailer. So we're really doing a lot of testing and learning. I know I mentioned that earlier, but then also really studying the data and what's happening in those performance results, and using retail-specific data, using panel data, and then scaling where it makes sense. So like really being very focused on what's working. Also something that my team and I are focused on is what we're not doing currently. So like where else could we be testing and learning, and then continue to test and scale, improve results. Some things might not work, but those things that do work at specific retailers, we lean in and scale there.
Test, learn, scale. I think that's one of the themes this week as I go around Expo West. Excellent. And Jeremy, I know you have a great example of this. Love to hear your input.
Yeah, of course. So here's a prime example for us. But holidays really are, our must-win period. Holiday baking's like biggest time of year for us, both with bottled spices as well as our vanilla extract. So really just making sure that we're top of mind during that season. And for that, I'd say like it's maybe a little bit less of like a singular moment, and just trying to really be the choice for the holiday season. So both of those months. And also just doing like a lot of recipe-focused stuff with that too.
I can tell you, I have my spice rack and it is full, especially in the holidays. It's definitely a stock-up time for us. Now let's talk about delivering consistent experiences. If positioning defines who you are and timing defines when you show up, consistency defines how you show up. Given everything we do to promote our products and our brand image, shoppers are going to naturally know when something just doesn't connect. That experience your brand across those touch points, and they experience that at shelf, on .com, in loyalty programs. It's when those moments reinforce each other that ultimately builds that brand trust. That leads me to my next question. How do you ensure your brand shows up consistently across all of those multiple touch points that you see either on shelf or .com? And then also, could you share an example of where alignment channels made a noticeable difference within your strategy? Enrick, I'd love to start with you on this one.
Yeah, I think for me, it all starts with cross-functional alignment, making sure that you're all working against the same mutually defined objectives. I think that's so critical when developing 360 campaigns. And one of the fun really examples that we have on the screen here is when we launched our winter palmberry SKU. So this is an opportunity for us going after a seasonally white space moment within the category, and everything was consistent from a 360 perspective. Everything that you saw on our social handles. In this example, a campaign with Target, our communication from connected TV, on-site activation, everything from in-store, everything to field marketing was a cohesive, connected experience, what I call seamless.
Consistency, same look and feel. I'm looking at this and I love that I could watch that on CTV, then scroll on my phone, and I'm going to see that same message and ultimately lead me to that store at Target to pick it up. DeeDee, same question.
Yeah, so we also have a Target example here of a consistent experience. And this example I'm showing is actually from a couple months ago. So Target Wellness campaign, so it's showing the in-store end cap and pallet drop. So it wasn't the same in all locations. So if you did happen to see this, maybe you just saw one of those placements. But in this example, you're seeing both together. So messaging is consistent for the most part, but really what we're trying to do is have this cohesive messaging or cohesive experience across all channels. So partnering with Roundel for Target display media, making sure our brand page is up to date in all content, including enhanced content, and had social presence as well. So making sure that every touch point is a consistent look and feel.
Yeah, and the visual here is great, and I love how you have the same messaging points, but it's conveyed just a little bit differently on each of those mediums. Something that each consumer can take that and go in and know exactly where that is in store. That leads me to my next question. I know I'm hammering you guys with questions, so let me know if this is too much. My next question, how do you ensure your brand shows up consistently with those touch points, but then also measurement? When you're showcasing on multiple avenues and multiple touch points, measurement becomes more important. It's expected today. It's also very complex. You're activating across multiple retail media networks, platforms, and retailer environments. That's why connected measurement matters. Retail verified closed loop attribution media and incentives gives you one clear view into that performance. The easy part is saying it, the hard part is executing it. You don't want to look at 5 different dashboards and piece together analytical reports. You're looking for one cohesive measurement solution. What I consistently hear from my brand partners is clear visibility into repeat purchase, incrementality, and real behavior change is much easier to turn that insight into action when you have all those elements connecting. Now I ask each of you, how are you currently measuring success? Enrick, I'd like to start with you and then pop over to Jeremy and then end with DeeDee.
Yeah, I think it first and foremost, it starts with the objective. Like, what are we trying to accomplish with a specific campaign, and what are we trying to achieve? So, for us in some cases, we might be very focused on sales lift. In other cases, we might be looking very heavily at trial and repeat. Did we generate the trial we need? Are we getting people to return and repeat on the brand? And then, velocity is also an important metric. Is our programming driving continued velocities within the category?
Thanks, Enrick. Jeremy, curious your take on it.
Yeah, of course. So, obviously, the goal is to drive sales at the end of the day, but there's a lot of different ways that we do that, and it kind of varies by campaign. For this example that I've got here, a lot of this was, the goal was to drive a change in the purchase frequency. So, with vanilla extract, for example, a lot of people are going to buy that once a year, or maybe around the holidays when they're doing holiday baking. This campaign actually ran during the summer. With the goal, trying to provide some new usage occasions for that vanilla, mostly recipe driven, and then also with coupon offers to bring in shoppers to that. But really, we're trying to see, can we make those shoppers purchase 2 a year instead of 1, or something similar along those lines. But we've seen it work well, and some of the measurement you all provided helped us see the performance there. But the first year we did this program, saw a slight lift. And then repeated it, took some learnings from that program, and really knocked it out of the park the second year we did the program.
I love that. Identifying white space opportunities, measuring, testing, learning, and ultimately getting that reporting contextually is definitely important. Love it. And then DeeDee, I'll end with you.
Yeah, similar to Enrick, we're really looking closely at the objectives of each campaign. So, We do know that sales do matter, but in many cases, we're trying to drive awareness in that first trial and then also see the repeat. So this example that you're seeing here, this was in partnership with Inmar. This is a great program that we ran last year, and it was the shelf tag program, which was placed within the Ahold Delhaize network, and we expanded distribution. And what we're trying to do is disrupt the aisle, right? That's what those aisle blades are for. And it's often a busy area in the store where there's many snacks to choose from. So the shelf tag was disruptive. We saw great results, sales lift on those hero SKUs that were shown there, but also saw some great sales with the halo SKUs, which proved that shoppers were not only purchasing, maybe those first two sticks, they were also trying multiple flavors, or maybe they were coming back to the brand to purchase those. So with Inmar's reporting, it led us to believe that this is a program that we wanted to scale again, and just continuing to use performance reporting wherever possible to make those informed decisions.
And to build on that, I love this program, especially looking at the prominence on shelf there. Has having clear visibility into that program changed the way that you ultimately plan and go into these seasonal timeframes? And what have you found that makes you most confident when building these plans in terms of measurement?
Yeah, definitely. When we talk about internal confidence, this is cross-functional again. So, oftentimes a team might be just looking at trade promo spikes and in the data, but it's important to really look at the whole story when you do activate marketing, and you do see real success and ways that you can continue to amplify and scale in those areas that worked. And it might not be the same across all retailers that you're working with. So having that mindset that it's not a one-size-fits-all approach, but really leaning into those retail marketing partners and what tactics they recommend and how they can help you roadmap success, whatever your budget is in the moment.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point. Not every retailer is the same, and really leaning on your partners, the RMNs and your partner vendors to determine that best strategy is something that can definitely help build on that, and ultimately you can use that and test and learn. And Enrick, I'd like to follow up with that same question. What have you found to be most useful in building that internal confidence?
Yeah, I think clear reporting is always key, tying back again to objective. What are you trying to accomplish? I think particularly emerging brands, and DeeDee and I were just chatting earlier, we just first started with a team of one, really built the disciplines from scratch. And I think really this the importance of having small, I call it, small and quick wins. So, whether that you might be investing in an RMN network, partners like partner Inmar, fish where the fish are, focus where the high propensity of your shopper, where your shopper is, and build those wins, campaigns before you start working and building larger 360 activation, and focusing what your leadership and ELT teams looking for. I've been a part of organizations reporting into marketing, reporting into sales. What's most important to your leadership and ELT teams?
Thanks for sharing that, Enrick. And then finally, we'll wrap up with building habits. Now, I know this may seem familiar to all of you, and I don't want anybody to get PTSD, but think about this. A launch hits, a seasonal window opens, you activate a promotion, you see the sales spike, but then the reporting period ends. You're sitting in the room, you're going, what do we do next? Do you sustain the momentum? If so, where? How long are you going to sustain that momentum? Are you going to double down to protect that shelf space? Stay visible? Do you pull back and reallocate? Tons of questions flying through your head at the same time. And ultimately, we know there's real value in being consistently present, but it isn't always financially sustainable. So it leads me to my next question for you all. What's the difference about strategies that drive short-term spikes versus those that sustain repeat over time? Enrick, start with you.
Yeah, I think going to basic shopper marketing 101, right? When I think short-term, it's the ability to drive incremental sales during that promotional window, and then I think of long-term, how are you driving sustained growth outside of that promotional window? How are you driving repeat. You know, for us, it's how do we make Bloom become a part of everyone's everyday routine, going back to how do we make everyone bloom into their best version of themselves.
Love that. Jeremy?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with what Enrick said. Very similar for us. So try some like deeper discounts if we want to see that short-term spike. It's also been effective in bringing in new shoppers. But from there, you know, a lot of the sustained growth is definitely going to come from like reinforcing the values and just being there in the right moments for those shoppers. A lot of things we do is recipe driven. So like we'll introduce them maybe with like that coupon and show a recipe with that, and then try to engage them throughout the year by providing those other recipes that you know, are seasonally relevant.
Incentivize, inspire for additional discovery. Love that. And DeeDee, I'll end with you. What separates trial from true loyalty?
Yeah, so we definitely do see those spikes and when there's a promotion happening or a discount, but that true loyalty is happening when you do see consumers using the product in their everyday lives. So it's in their gym bag, it's part of their workday routine, they're traveling with Chomps. That's where that true loyalty comes in, and we're just looking for those opportunities where, you know, we see our consumers using the product, we're learning from our shoppers, and you know, leveraging those moments for continued scale.
Love it. And my last question for all of you before I let you go, if you could give me and the audience one piece of advice for an emerging brand to turn early momentum into repeat growth into 2026, what would it be? Enrick, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think for me it's pretty simple. You know, it's obsessing over repeat, not just distribution. I know those distribution wins could be very exciting, you know, whether we're getting to a large chain, but you know, really the clock starts, you know, day one. So really putting that focus on driving sustainable long-term growth for your brand.
DeeDee, curious your take. What's your advice for the next generation?
Yeah, I will say use as much data as you can find, leverage your retail media networks to help plan, and really lean into the tactics that they offer, and you know, use case studies and try to learn as much as you can from those partners. And then also the internal piece of it, which I know I mentioned earlier, but it is a lot of cross-functional collaboration, so making sure that you're all aligned on the same objectives per retailer or customer channel, and then mapping out your strategy by those customers. So seeing, you know, what that full omnichannel experience looks like, both in store, digital, and in between.
Be curious about the data and collaborate. Love it. Jeremy, let's wrap it up with you. What's your advice for the next generation of emerging brands?
Yeah, I mean, really, it's giving shoppers a reason to come back to your products. Ultimately, like, that's what we want to do. We want to drive that repeat and maintain loyalty across our shoppers, and I would say make sure that that's your focus.
I can't agree with you more. So, and what I'm hearing out of all of you, especially as we go through this session, is shoppers are more intentional. They're editing their carts with purpose. They're rewarding brands that feel clear, relevant, and consistent. If you're interested in any of the data behind many of the trends we touched on today, our 2026 annual behavioral trends report is now available. Right over there is a nifty QR code that you can scan right here to request access to that report. It will go into how shoppers' intentions are reshaping baskets, where loyalty is fluid but not lost, how planning behavior is evolving, and also what that means for brands headed into 2026. Now, last but not least, I want to thank our panelists for sharing their perspective today. Thank you all, and thank you for being here and attending this session. We have some time left, so I want to open it up for a little Q&A with our panelists. So if anybody has any questions, just raise your hand. We can give you a mic. Yes. Okay.
Even better. So my question was around how, when you run these tests, because we're obviously big believers in running tests as well, how you're isolating the variable that you're testing for. So for example, we got a new retailer in Illinois, and they're putting up amazing numbers. How do we isolate? Is that the demographic of the retailer? Is it the demographic in Illinois? Is it the pricing they're launching at? Is it the time of year? Like, how are you, when you're running these fast tests, especially around pricing, for example, how do you isolate that variable?
What do you guys want?
I can take that.
All right, DeeDee will take it.
Yeah, I'll I'll do my best to answer this question because that's a big challenge, right? There's so many variables. So what we have found is when you are, let's say one example here is if you had a new launch of a product, don't activate marketing right away, right? Let there be some baseline sales. And then if there's a trade promo, like look closely at the timing of the trade promos, and maybe you don't stack marketing at the same time as those trade promos because you want to be able to see the effectiveness of either layering and stacking with a trade promo or only running a marketing program after there's been some baseline sales established. Yeah.
Awesome. Any other questions?
So you said that I keep hearing over and over again that consumers will claim to buy brands that align with their values. Claim, 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 claim. It's easy to say that in a survey. Do you have actual data that shows the behavior matches the claims? Or is it just something they say in surveys?
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky, right? Like, we've definitely seen that with consumers, like, saying, you know, that it's super important and that's what will get them to buy it, and then, like, sometimes the purchases aren't there. I wouldn't say, like, the data on that's perfect, but it's definitely something you can dive into a little bit. Do, like, a lot of panel data or, like, looking at consumer research platforms. Some of those, you know, we're able to kind of match up some of that purchase data, but I would say it's definitely not like a perfect process.
Yeah, I would say, you know, for us, you know, it's validating through primary research, or, you know, I think a big piece is if you have access to, like, consumer decision trees and understanding kind of what, you know, what claims and how people are actually shopping your category.
Any additional questions?
I
Yes.
think my question was similar to his maybe. Are your buyers sharing with you shopper data, like through their cards and sharing it so you could see this shopper purchased it on this week or this month, and then that same shopper purchased it again? Are your buyers supplying you that data? Is that how you're measuring repeat?
So, you know, I would say it depends on the retailer, right? Not naming, you know, I think there's ones that we have to certainly subscribe to and buy into the data. You know, I think, you know, the beauty of working with some of the retail media networks and folks like Inmar, you have able to access that data, so running campaigns. Again, it's gonna be like a retailer by case basis, but I think you know, when you start investing into some of these retail media networks and partners like Inmar, you'll have the ability to get access to much deeper insights than you traditionally get.
Can you be very specific? Who is a good sharer of data and who is greedy with their data, and how much does that data cost?
Yeah.
Like where, yeah, like really specifically, where are you getting the data, like specifically, and how are you able to access it? Because that is what everyone's wondering, like, how do I know for my brand if this is gonna work? Is it my relationship with the buyer I need to develop, or is it somebody I need to hire and pay for the data and they're gonna give it to you for this time period? Or what data are you using to make your decisions?
Yeah, you know, I would say, again, it's going to be, you know, like basically starting with panel data, right? I think, you know, using sources like, you know, Numerator or IRI panels, I think always a good place to start, right? Because those are aggregators. They bring in data from a large subset. So, you know, I think as you're looking off where to start, I would probably say panel is a good place to start. Panel data, and then, you know, I think from a retailer, you know, perspective, right? I think have those conversations with your buyers, right? And, you know, see if it's a cost-effective move, right? You know, a lot of times investing into the data might not be a financially good decision, you know, right off the bat. You know, a lot of these are, you know, pay to play, and depending on your category size. You know, I would say, I think last milers are very, you know, transparent. You know, if you're like, you know, with the Quick Commerce, the DoorDash, the Instacarts of the world, I think they do a great job of sharing data as you invest. So, but, you know, happy to chat, you know, as a follow-up offline if you have other questions.
Yeah, I will say at Chomps, we do use Numerator data, and we work closely at that. So we have a really skilled business analytics team that helps review repeat and household penetration then also partners like Inmar providing like lift studies
Yep.
and deeper analysis into what is happening with audience behavior.
We have another question over here. Sorry, oh, I didn't see you there.
All right, so my question, just in regards to, we're, smaller brand, emerging brand, but small budget still. And we had a brand refresh that's working really, really well for us. So we're bringing all sorts of new buyers into our brand, which is great. Obviously, repeat now is on my mind. I want to, start driving some kind of bounce back campaign at some point. Again, though, like very little dollars. You guys have clearly like way bigger budgets than I do. So I'm curious, like if we were to run a campaign for some kind of bounce back campaign to make sure these people are coming back, building the behavior of, buying Cleveland Kitchen, what type of tactics would you employ with knowing that it's a small budget, right? Like there's paid social, there's digital, there's CTV, there's, sorry, I know we're in Inmar, but like there's also like Catalina, Register. There's so many different options. And so from a tactical standpoint where efficiency matters, I'm just curious, like I very rarely get to talk with other marketers like this, so just curious what you guys would recommend.
Yeah, I don't think my mic is on. Is it? Now it's on. So of all of the ideas that you just mentioned, I would structure those out or list those out and then also list the objectives of each of those channels. So you mentioned social, but you want to drive repeat, so volume is your KPI. So thinking like, are you seeing conversions happen from social? And that differs by category, right? It might be more of an awareness driver. So we have this conversation a lot internally about like, okay, this tactic is going to drive awareness, but right now, maybe we want to drive volume. So there may be retargeting capabilities to look at that are directly tied to the retailer. So specific to, if there's multiple retailers, they're national.
Can you go into that door? Here you go.
Sorry. It's over 15,000 stores nationally. Like there's not a specific retailer that we would do this with. Really it would be, we know who our consumer is, we know who we're bringing in, and it's just really getting them to come back again, right? With it, they've purchased within the last literally 3 months, right? It's highly purchase-based targeted that we'd be working with a partner on. And so there are these different tactics. And so I'm just curious, like what you guys have seen. Like, have you seen within the Better For You food and beverage space, and we are at the retail. So like we're not D2C. So I'm just, our B2C, oh my gosh, I can't even think right now. Anyway, I'm just so curious, like what you guys would do.
Yeah, and I think if you're not doing search, I think search is a really good place to start, right? To make sure that you're coming top of the list. I think you mentioned your center store, so if you're not investing in search, I think it's a great way that you could leverage on a limited budget and build the business case as you generate returns. But I think there's opportunity, depending on the retailer, I think there's opportunity like to do targeted digital offers, but I gravitate towards search. I think search is really, a good option, with limited budgets as you start.
Okay, can I? My name is Marcelo Bella. I'm a president of the Brazilian Association of the Nutrition, and my question, in true, is not a question, but is a reflection. I create in the last 4 years several brands of success, and the 3D is very important. No, delivery, philosophy, connection, delivery, real experience, and delivery, a real product. But will be the internet and the marketplace platforms like Amazon come for destroy the brands? My question is for you, for the shop and the Omnichannel director.
I'll be honest, I had a little hard time hearing you. Could you repeat like the question piece?
The platforms like Amazon come for destroy the branding because the price is most important, much more times of the products and the brands.
Yeah, so you're saying like kind of like how do you navigate like being like sold through Amazon and then like also like at your smaller like your local co-op?
You know, Amazon is very price-driven versus the other retailers that you're
Yeah.
at.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a very collaborative approach. We've got a great team that goes very in-depth on their pricing work to make sure, you know, we're not, you know, cutting anybody out too bad. I'd be happy to, you know, connect offline and talk a little bit more through it, but it's definitely like a cross-functional process for us.
Yeah, I think it almost goes to channel strategy too. Like, you know, first start fishing where your shopper is, right? That might be a specific channel, that might be, you know, natural, that might be, you know, digital commerce platform. I would say, you know, start slow before you start ramping up and get learnings before you start, you know, I think getting in some of the larger platform retailers like an Amazon.
For sure, and assortment definitely varies a lot by those channels too.
Thank you for your question. Any additional questions? All right, if not, I'll let you guys out early to go try some of those fantastic brands on the store floor. But again, thank you for joining us. Thank you for attending, and thank you to our panelists.